These are the words of my colleague, Unitarian Universalist Minister, Reverend Joe Cherry. Joy is hard. Joy requires us to feel safe enough, to be safe enough, to open to vulnerability. To feel joy, you must be brave. Joy walks into a room after the space has been cleared. Cleared of shame, cleared of doubt, cleared of self-recrimination. Joy is hard. Joy is hard, and joy is worth the hard work of preparation. Preparing oneself and settling down all one's defenses. All the should-haves and could-haves. All the should-not-haves and might-haves. Joy is worth the work. You are worth the work. You can start small. The simple pleasure of your favorite tea. The grand freedom of a full belly laugh. Invite joy to be your companion. I invite you to join me in a time of silence. In the prayer that I just gave a couple of minutes ago, said joy is worth the hard work of preparation in setting down one's defenses. I thought that was really interesting to think about, that to be open to joy, we kind of need to lower some of the barriers that we build up, barriers that we've built up to protect ourselves. Perhaps we have needed those barriers at some point in our life. But to be fully open to joy, we need to lower those barriers. To do that, it's an act of bravery, and we need to feel safe. And the prayer also mentions that joy can be our companion. And I love that idea, that image. Where's the image of driving along and having the passenger seat? I've got joy sitting next to me. Though, to be honest, I never experience joy when I'm driving. I am at my absolute worst when I'm driving. I've never felt such anger, because everyone that drives faster than me is crazy, and everyone that drives slow is an idiot. Not quite connecting with the inherent worth and dignity of every person when I drive. That's why I take the train and bike to work. But I like that idea of joy being a companion and can be a partner when we're facing struggles in our life. And I want to take a moment, every time I talk about joy, I always feel I need to explain the difference between joy and happiness, because I think we sometimes confuse the two. And they're similar, but they depend on a very different source. Happiness is more temporary and it's more dependent on external factors, like material things or people, places, or experiences. Joy is more an internal state of mind and comes from an appreciation of who we are and our life as it is, not the life as we wish it to be. But happiness can be a pointer to joy. And last week, Mary Ellen's wonderful sermon, she talked about during the AIDS crisis, how the queer community would often care for those severely ill in the morning, advocate for better healthcare in the afternoon, and then dance of joy in the evening. They did all three of those. And when she was giving that sermon last week, an image came to my mind. This is a story about Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Bill Clark, who in the 1980s and 90s was doing an AIDS ministry. And for the younger folk here, AIDS was a really severe disease that was still with us, and it's very severe in many parts of the country. But many, many people died in the 80s and 90s because of AIDS, and it was a real pandemic similar to we had with COVID recently. And he was doing this ministry, and he was getting really depressed because he was walking people through the path to death daily. And he was exhausted. And this happened day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and it was taking a severe emotional toll on him. So Bill decided he'd go for a walk on the beach, and he was walking on the beach, and this is the story he tells. He was walking on the beach, he thought he had the beach to himself. Now all of a sudden, he heard this woman's voice shouting, "Joy! Joy! Joy!" And he was startled, and he thought, well, she's not in trouble. She seems happy. She can shout loudly. And then he had this kind of revelation that, maybe I need to shout for joy. And he felt connected to the woman, so he started shouting, "Joy, joy, joy." He shouted it to the waves. He shouted it to the seagulls. He shouted it to this woman. He felt this close connection with the woman. And he thought, yes, we need to choose joy, especially when it's hard. And he could feel his whole body, his whole emotion, his whole heart lift up. And he was feeling elation, and then at that point, a damp and sandy golden retriever ran from behind the sand dune to the woman who was holding a lead. She goes, "There you are. Where have you been, Joy?" And takes her, the dog, and walks off. And Bill was left on the beach. He doesn't say what happened next. I presume he just kept shouting joy, but he just said that feeling stayed with him, that he realized joy can be a choice in hard times. But I can think of no better symbol. I know I'm going to get into trouble with the cat people again. I know I am, but I'm going for it. I can think of no better symbol than a damp, wet, sandy golden retriever to be a symbol of joy. Any of us who've seen a golden retriever on the beach knows there's no other joy like it. But I like that idea of freedom to choose joy. And Viktor Frankl, the great psychologist who was a survivor of Auschwitz concentration camp, says this: everything can be taken away from a person, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude to any given circumstances. To choose one's attitude to any given circumstances. Those are the words of Viktor Frankl. And I like this idea of freedom, of choosing joy. Can we intersperse it into the everyday activities of our life to help bring joy? How many of us in the morning, the first thing we do is listen to the news? Not anymore for me, because that does not bring me joy. Perhaps especially at the moment. The simple things for me are my routines in the morning. No surprise, coffee, shower, walk in the morning. Those are the simple joys, listening to music. And then you've got medium joys that we can intersperse in the day, meals with family and friends, singing in church like we just experienced and will experience after this, deep discussions where we explore these intimate topics that we could often do in our chalice circles here. Those are the medium joys. Take a bit of planning, but we can still do them. Not quite as straightforward as simple joys. Then there's complex joys around the absence of things that we deeply love. The joy that's intermingled with grief I'll be talking more about that next Sunday. And then there's large joys. I invite you to think, what are the large joys in your life? What are the large joys? I've had more time to think about this question than you have. I think there's two. There's self-love and there's love of life for me. And we often talk about a first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And as I want to remind you, that includes yourself. The inherent worth and dignity of every person includes each of us here, the ability to love ourselves. And I think that self-love can be a path to a large joy that stays with us, that can be in our companions, even when we're driving in traffic. And then that love of life. I think that love of life begins with an idea of gratitude, being grateful for the life we have, grateful for the health we have at whatever level it is, grateful for our friends, grateful for this religious community, grateful for our family. Those are the large joys. Love of self and love of life. And perhaps our spiritual practice is to call out to joy, to let it know that we are here and we are open to it. And if we can't quite manage joy, perhaps we can do gratitude, or kindness, or wonder, or amazement, or perhaps just simple appreciation for the life we have. Spiritual life is finding those positive, those life-affirming moments within our life and within ourselves. And in many religious traditions, joy is considered to be doing the sacred word of God. And for Unitarian Universalists, I think joy is living an engaged life with our spiritual values, embodying love to those around us, kindness to our neighbours, compassion and justice to those who are hurting. If we do those, joy will be one of the fruits that bear from a rich spiritual life.